Welcome back. So this is the first video for Chapter 7 in Industrial Organization. And this is kind of the first chapter where we're really getting into models that you probably haven't seen before in, like, if you've taken intermediate micro. So what we're going to be talking about today is product differentiation. And it's one of my favorite sort of topics in industrial organization because it really helps explain a lot of what we actually see, right? We see, products that are basically the same, but vary across different characteristics. So we'll have sort of what we call multi-characteristic differentiation. We'll have horizontal differentiation, where it's really just based on what people like. Do people like red or blue or whatever? And then we'll have vertical differentiation, where we all sort of agree what's better, and so, but we will choose different ones based on price, right? So, some people might prefer a high-priced, high-quality product. Some people might prefer a lower price, lower quality product. So let's get into it here. Product differentiation is something we see every day, right? We see it in cars, we see it in breakfast cereals, we see it in clothes, we see it basically in everything. And it's one of the ways that firms can sort of get out of that perfect competition model where they earn no profits, right? And really moves us more towards that sort of monopolistic competition model where, of course, they still earn no profits, but they think they can earn profits and they do have some market power. And so, we think about examples. One of the questions is, which products compete against each other? So, some are pretty obvious, right? So a Toyota Corolla and a Honda Civic, they're definitely in the same market. They're definitely competing against each other. But then, I mean, do they compete at all against fancier cars like the Acura TSX or the Porsche 911? Do those cars compete against each other? And what firms are trying to do is trying to find that little niche, right? Trying to find that niche where there's less competition. And so, this is really important for firms, deciding on how to advertise products, how to price products. And it's also really important for regulators because if a firm has really no competition, then it's going to behave much more like a monopolist, and we might want to, bring a case against them. Whereas if there's lots of products that they're competing against, then, there's much more competition. There's much less deadweight loss in the market. So one of the, I think, sort of fascinating questions in economics is, how much product differentiation is real versus subjective, and whether or not there's even really a difference there. So think about like Coke and Pepsi. So Coke and Pepsi are basically the same product, even though that we all know that Coke is better, right? So, but really, is that real differentiation or subjective differentiation? Is a red car and a blue car real differentiation or subjective differentiation? So, when we're going to have a sort of definition here when products differ in objective characteristics. So I guess color is an objective characteristics. That's real or objective product differentiation. But if we have things that really just don't differentiate at all, it's just based on brand or it's just based on sort of feels, then we'll have perceived or subjective product differentiation. Now, from a firm's perspective, what really matters is simply that the consumers are differentiating their products, right? Because that's what gives firms market power. So if you can convince consumers that, Tylenol is different than acetaminophen or Advil is different than ibuprofen, even though they're objectively exactly the same, then you can have some pricing power, right? And so if you go to CVS and you say, oh, do I want to buy the Advil or the ibuprofen? They're exactly the same medicine. Advil costs more. Why is that? Well, there's some subjective or perceived differentiation there that's allowing the makers of Advil to charge more. And I think that's a very interesting piece of industrial organization. So we can think about lots of different, sort of ways in which products can differ, right? So they can differ based on physical product differences. So, something that's made, from plastic versus metal or leather, colors, right? So, Henry Ford apparently once said that consumers can have any color they want in a Model T as long as it's black. And then competitors came along and started offering different colors of car and found that consumers really wanted that, right? So that was a real thing that people wanted. And then obviously features, right? So features can differ. We can have differences in service, right? So, service quality can be a big differentiator in terms of how a product is supported. Differences in geographic location. So we'll talk about the hoteling model in, I think it's the next video. And that's really about sort of geographic differences, although we can also kind of think about it just in terms of taste differences. But like gas stations, right? Gas stations are basically selling the same thing, but you'll often see one gas station with a higher price than the other. And a lot of that is just based on location, right? The gas station that gets more traffic by it, that's more convenient for people, will be able to charge more. And then we can have difference in product image, so brand. And so, a lot of companies spend a lot on advertising in order to build their brand, it's, even though, they're basically selling undifferentiated products, right? So we talked about Coke and Pepsi. We can think about, different light beers, different bottles of water, right? I mean, it's a bottle of water. It's not different, but firms advertise them in order to try to differentiate themselves in consumers' minds. And so this is all, we do have to think about the cost difference, right? And so this is going to be one of the things that we talk, in horizontal versus vertical differentiation. Horizontal differentiation is really you're trying to appeal to different tastes. And so, some people will prefer this, some people prefer that, some people prefer that. Vertical differentiation, we all kind of agree on which is the higher quality and which is the lower quality. And so you have to decide, okay, well, how much do I want to improve my product and how much can I charge then? And so those are the types of models that we're going to look at in this chapter. So we'll really talk about three different types of product differentiation. So the first is multi-characteristic product differentiation. And that's where products can differ over like a bunch of different characteristics, right? And so here we see that products will be close but not perfect substitutes. So if you think about different smartphones, right? So an iPhone versus a Samsung Galaxy versus a Google Pixel versus a Motorola, whatever. They all pretty much do the same thing, but they're not perfect substitutes. Horizontal product differentiation is we can focus on one characteristic, right? So the hoteling model that we're going to look at looks at location, but we can really think of location as, a metaphor for a lot of different, characteristics across which products can vary. Consumers have different tastes, right? Just like consumers will live in different places and so have different preferences over the location of a grocery store, a restaurant, or a, ice cream stand. And so firms will compete to be in different places so that they can differentiate themselves. And then finally, vertical product differentiation is really about quality. And so with quality, all consumers agree, right? So we can agree that a BMW is better quality than a Honda. But we might have different preferences over how much we're willing to pay for quality. And so then firms can differentiate themselves vertically and decide, okay, we're going to have sort of the top of the market, middle of the market, bottom of the market, and have different prices based on that. All right, so we're going to basically have the next video that's going to talk about horizontal product differentiation. We'll look at something called the hoteling model and some versions of the hoteling model. And then we'll look at vertical product differentiation where, the differentiation is really all about quality.